Guys, welcome back. It's me, Brandon Steckler, Technical Editor Motor Age Magazine. I'm excited because we are on our second episode of our new video series called Wrench Tales, where we feature a butt-kicking case study and we walk our way through it using logic. And sometimes things go really smooth and sometimes they don't. But hey, you gotta play the cards you're dealt. Uh, Today I'm with my really good friend from Chicagoland, Rick Urso of High Tech Auto Specialists, and I'm excited about this because Rick started telling me about this car a couple weeks ago, and this one's gnarly. Rick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Awesome. Hey, listen, first of all, I know it's nighttime. You want to get home, have dinner, and play with the kiddos, but I really appreciate you taking the time to help us understand this car. Um, it was pretty amazing the story you told me about how this diagnosis went. So before we go any further, tell me, am I wrong or did this thing really take like a month or so till you finally got to the bottom of it?
Yeah, no, you're definitely not lying. It definitely took a month, and this was an extended crank that was only happened when it was cold, and it had to be like below 30, you know.
So you couldn't even address this problem unless the weather behaved the way you needed it to.
That's correct.
In the summertime when it gets hot and you need something to happen hot, it's okay. You start the car and you let it run and you leave the hood down and you hot soak it for a while and then you can easily replicate it. But cold, that's hard to do. You're at the mercy of whatever the weather is.
Yeah, and luckily the customer brought it in during, during one of those, polar vortexes when it's like negative 10 degrees,
Oh,
negative 20 degrees, and we had to leave the car outside, so all testing was done outside, two cranks a day on it to actually
you're
get the
kidding.
to act up.
You get two opportunities a day to get this thing to act up, and you got to hope you're looking at the right data when that
Yep.
happens.
Yep.
Man. And on top of that, you're out in polar vortex weather trying to get this stuff done.
Yep. Yep. Bundled up,
Oh,
you know.
you know what? That's the kind of weather where the screen on your scan tool starts to fade out, like it doesn't want to respond.
Yeah, yeah, you have to give it a
Oh.
couple bumps to get it to start working right.
Yeah. So it cranks for a long period of time. Is that what it is?
Yes, yeah. So it was a long crank, and it would sound like a crank no start. If you
Okay.
So it wasn't trying to start as you were cranking it, you know.
Like if you had a dead fuel pump or something.
Yeah, yeah, or like
Okay.
where fuel pressure is coming in and out, it kind of kicks and wants to start, but it doesn't. This was like a good, you know, 1.5 to 5 second, cadence that, and then it would start up after that second, second, third try, start up and run fine all day long.
So you can drive the car on the road, no problem. You could shut it off. It would restart without a problem. It was only those first two starts, ice cold during the day.
Yes, yes,
Oh man, that's got to be tough. I've been down that road before and it's not fun.
no,
You know,
no,
I've got to the point where reluctantly have left my equipment connected to the vehicle. Wires everywhere, test leads everywhere, hoping no one steals it or we don't get some big storm
yeah,
because I know I want to plug into it and
yeah.
hit the key and hope to capture that issue. Wow, that's frustrating.
Yeah, I think
But
I think I had my leads under this hood for for that whole month unless I had to use them. Yeah, I was leaving them under there, close the hood and
oh,
yeah.
that's tough. That's and this is why cars get bounced around from shop to shop because everybody, I don't want to say everybody, but most shops, oh, we can't replicate the problem. Come back when it's doing it more often. Customers don't want to hear that.
Right.
So I imagine you hooked up the scan tool.
I did. I did. I scanned it for codes, no codes in any of the systems, and then pretty much went to the inputs, just want to verify some key important inputs pretty much,
For sure.
which some of these are listed here.
Yeah. So nothing really stood out as strange to you when you were looking at. because I'm always looking for that information, right from the driver's seat. Hopefully, something to give me some kind of a sense of direction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't see anything, good inputs to verify, especially in a problem like this. Coolant temperature, we want to key on and see what it's reading, see if it's seems accurate, right?
Yeah,
Idle air temperature, just, it's there. Might as well look at it. Um,
yeah.
and then we got the other ones that we can look at. This was kind of a tough problem because looking at a mass airflow input when it's cranking is kind of, it's like, is it good?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a tough scenario.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, and unless you've looked at known good,
right,
that
right, right.
so
Or
that
it
that is tough.
seems, yeah, yeah. The more you see, the more you're kind of like, okay, that seems normal, But if it
Uh-huh.
was off the wall, that's why it's a good practice to check these easy things that you could do from the driver's seat.
Okay, so to recap here, engine RPM, cranking RPM. Obviously, not every scan tool is going to show that, but we like to see it when it's there. Your
Sure.
throttle showed it was closed. You didn't have any. I mean, you're at sea level, right? You're
Yeah.
near sea level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, if it's showing barometric pressure that matches that, I mean, these inputs are basically it's reporting the ambient conditions around the vehicle. Basically, the computer can interpret how much air is coming in the car. It should be able to deliver the right amount of fuel if
Correct.
that's if everything else is working. I got to ask you. So minus 13% fuel trim, but I'm cranking. We're usually an open loop. So for me, like seeing that 13% corrective factor, I wonder if that's some kind of long-term learned value. In other words, this has been happening for a while and the computer automatically sets to take away 13% fuel. Do you know anything about that? Or is that just something we just kind of something you
Yeah.
noticed, but we're not
Yeah.
really hanging our
I
hat yet?
No, yeah, I'd say it definitely could be that, because but it is hard to say what the computer is exactly doing it. How does Honda and Acura present their fuel trims during open loop cranking? It could just be
Yeah,
a value that's like a substituted value almost that doesn't
sure
even
could.
it's not even looking at it. And
Yep.
that's something. But I pretty much just looked at that and put that in the back of my mind to just remember that, just in case it did matter, right?
I'd have to do that too. And you know what? That's a great tip for other technicians. Sometimes you're going to get data that doesn't quite line up. You don't
Yeah,
have to say, I'm not worried about this, or this is definitely my problem. But it's okay to say, you know what? I'm not going to forget about it, but I'm going to put it down here towards the bottom of my list and focus on other things first. Hopefully, I can prove other things out. And if I have to go back to that, I will. So, I mean, everything you're telling me here, Rick, tells me the computer has what it needs. If the computer's functioning, it should be able to make the proper decision. The only other thing I have in question is if the decision is to open the injectors X amount of time, how much fuel pressure is behind that injector? Did you check fuel pressure, didn't you?
yeah, of course. At some point, during my testing, uh, because Honda and Acura is not the easiest test
Oh
to
yeah.
check the fuel pressure. So I
Yeah.
would say I definitely did check the fuel. I got to a point to where I was like, all right, I need to check this fuel pressure.
Everything here shows me the inputs appear to be proper. Like from what you told me, Rick, nothing stands out as suspect for me right here. Meaning plain and simple, what we evaluated was does the computer have what it needs to make the right decision? I think it does. Um, and the fact that you verified fuel pressure is available, it's time to start at this point putting our hands on some things. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And why are we going to move to the scope after seeing the data on the scan tool, right? Could the scan tool ever mislead us
Sure.
or maybe not see something fast enough?
I make a joke sometimes. I ask people when I'm in class, I ask people if they have children. And I describe it like this. I used to walk into my daughter's room and I'd open up the door and I'd say, hey, baby, you got to clean this room up. I issued a command. Was that command carried out?
Right. Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, the ECM, PCM indicates what it's trying to do, but it doesn't mean it happened. So by you grabbing your scope, I mean, the way I see a scope is you're seeing circuit activity. You're seeing things happen in real life,
Yeah,
you know,
firsthand.
on
Yep.
circuits. Guess that's your approach on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
I want to see
what
what's actually happening, you know.
so it when you're dealing with a crank no start like this, I mean, in my mind, there's only several things that could prevent an engine from starting. There could be many reasons why whatever the thing is missing. But if we boil it down to, well, what's an engine need? It needs air and integrity, it needs spark, and it needs fuel. So what was your plan of attack? Obviously, you got the scope on there, and the way I see the scope is it's a way of verifying, what's happening on the circuit, what the computer's actually doing. I mean, what is your plan of attack for a crank no start?
Yeah, so after gathering that, initial data, I wanted to see exactly what was happening. So I went to, the four primary circuits that an engine needs to start and be happy, pretty much. So went to
Gotcha.
the, spark, air, fuel, timing, which we pretty much already verified the air, I would say, right?
Yeah, for the most part. But I mean, it's great that. Whoa, well, hold on a second. You can see the problem happening right here.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's happening here, and all of a sudden we got some activity. So, you're hitting the key, but I mean, you can see at the point the engine starts because everything it gets squashed together, it starts speeding up. So this is, wow, like 5 full seconds of cranking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd call that an extended crank problem.
Yeah. And Brandon, I'll paint the picture for you where I had to, you know, run outside and find these circuits, freezing, find these circuits to probe into, but there was no way that I was not figuring this vehicle out. It
You're
was
you're angry at this point, huh?
yeah, it was gonna happen, and yeah, that's what I that's what I did. I bared the cold.
So tell me what's going on here. So what are we looking at? I know we got a lot of time on the screen, so it's hard to see any detail, but
Yeah. Yeah. So here's pretty much your four primary circuits that, I would want to look at when I have a situation like this. We have our crank, we have our crank signal here at the top, and then we're coming down to our two camshaft signals, coming from our
yeah, solid
coming
from
from our
intake.
sensors. And I also this testing was done at the PCM
Oh,
because
good.
I wanted to make sure that these three signals here, were making it to the PCM and not just coming out of the sensor. Because I got
That's
burned like
great.
that. I got burned like that before, and it's
Well, yeah,
never
you're right.
burned.
If you're testing at the sensor, it proves the sensor did what it was supposed to do, but it doesn't mean it made it all the way to the computer. So
Absolutely.
that's a great tip. Test
Yep.
inputs at the computer.
Yeah.
So you know what I love how you did here, and this is the way I portray this all the time when I'm telling people, Rick. It's like you and I think exactly the same. Um, this is an input. This is an input. This is an input. This is what the computer needs to make decisions. What's this? This is a current trace. It looks like, right?
Yeah.
Amperage.
Yep. Yep.
So we're measuring amperage of what?
What was it like?
Injectors and
Yeah. Oh, the coils and the injectors just
yeah,
happen
and
to be on the same circuit on this one.
hey, I'll
So
take
we
free data
actually
when I can get it.
actually kind of worked because my scope only has four channels, so kind of worked
Beautiful.
worked out in this case.
I like that. So I call current the work being performed.
Yes.
You're seeing the work, and the work is occurring because the PCM is getting the inputs it needs. So it's kind of telling the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's this? What do we got going on here?
So now we want to zoom in and get a closer look, get a detailed look to
Okay.
see, if everything lines up. Here's where that timing part comes in. We want to make sure
What's
everything
this?
everything lines
What's
up.
this blue thing?
So that blue is going to be our that's going to be our phase cursors pretty much. So
Okay,
we can see one full revolution of two full
gotcha.
revolutions, I would say.
I see that. That says 0 degrees
Yes.
and 720 degrees.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So so this tells the scope what one full cycle is. How
Correct.
did you do this? How did you come up with 22 degrees and 27 degrees offset?
So what I did was with the power of this of the Pico and many other scopes, can do the same thing. Now that I know 720 degrees, I was able to bring the other cursors on the side, which are going to give me exact measurements from my reference point, pretty much, which my reference point is the blue cursors.
Right there.
Yeah,
I see you're pointing at. Yeah. So your other cursor, I guess you'd put here.
true. Yep. And then put
Awesome. And
at
it
zero.
would indicate the offset. So what do we do here? We just wrote this here to make it easy to see, right? That
Yeah.
would normally
Yeah.
pop up in a window. I see what you did here. Okay, good.
So you
So
can
you
see.
did that for one cam and that for the other, right?
Yes.
Well, then you got a good one. Where'd you source that at? Did you have one of these on your lot or something?
So I didn't. I didn't. Sometimes it works out that way, not often. Not
Yeah.
often. But so,
Not whenever I need it.
there's plenty of sources out there. I know for sure that this one came from a Facebook group with it's mainly known, it's actually only just known good scope captures that
Love
you
that.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely saved me, a bunch of times because sometimes you're not getting by without one of these. That's it.
I'll
And
tell you what, if you guys are listening, it's called, I know exactly what Rick's talking about. The Automotive Waveform Exchange. It's a Facebook
yes,
group.
yeah,
You
yeah,
got
that's
to
it.
get in, you got to request to be in it, and then you get approved,
Yep,
if I'm not mistaken. But we all collaborate and we share. When we get a good car in our shop and we capture information, we will upload that to this, and then someone like Rick comes in and he will search out, a like vehicle, and they post in this case the Pico scope file, and now he has a known good capture. So if he wasn't aware of his engines in time properly, we're not talking about jumping two or three teeth. Sometimes we're talking about just some stretch.
yeah,
This known good, there's only a 2 degree difference here I'm seeing,
yep.
and maybe a 3 or 4 degree difference here. I'll tell you what, in my opinion, that's not very much, but I can tell you on some cars, that's the difference between a car that runs and one that won't even start. It's a software thing. Like 4 degrees is enough to piss off the computer, so to speak,
Yeah,
and it won't
yeah,
let it start.
yeah. Yeah,
But
it's just like the Nissan 3.5s. I mean, they could be, I don't even know exactly what it is, maybe 0 to say 5 degrees, or 5 to 7 degrees, and it'll
yeah,
it'll shut the injectors off, and I've actually seen that before to where a normal vehicle would run, like a Chevy, they could be, 7 to 10 degrees out and run fine, like the
yeah.
3.6 or the 2.4s, So
It's a great lesson to know. I mean, don't take it for granted that every car is the same. Just because something behaved one way doesn't mean every car is going to behave that way. So you just got to keep that stuff in mind. That's a great tip though. So what do you think about this timing? You okay with this?
so I'm happy. At that point, I was happy with it. Time to move on, pretty much.
I agree. So zooming in on that scope capture, this is what we looked at. Well, let me back up. What we did was take this here because I really wanted to show obviously we're only showing a screenshot here, and Rick picked all this stuff apart, obviously, to diagnose it, to analyze it. And
Yeah,
that's what we're seeing here. And then we zoomed in even further. Tell me a story here, Rick. What's going on here? What do you see here? What does this all mean to you? Can you explain this to me?
yeah. So actually, it pretty much tells a lot of what's going on, just within this capture here. Um, Start with the small one. The small one's going to be the current flow, the work, that the fuel injector is doing. Um, and as you can see, the current flow goes up, and then we have a detailed little bump right there, little, what do you want to call that? Little
Like a
little
pintle bump.
yeah, And that right there that's the actual fuel injector moving. That's a fuel injector opening. It's
That's
winding.
tremendously powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a thing to know. I mean, guys, and you hear me mention stuff like this all the time about laws of physics, and we don't like to be consider ourselves scientists, but we are. And to understand the laws of physics, um, in this case, I think it's Lenz's law or Faraday's law. Is it? I can't remember now. But you take a piece of metal and you move it through or within proximity of some inductive windings, it can generate a voltage, and that voltage is actually fighting the current here. So basically, this bump means that the injector actually it moved. So that's really powerful information.
Yeah.
What do we got over here?
We
Go ahead.
displayed it. We displayed it on a scope, and we can actually see the movement happening. That's where the where the pudding is, I guess, if you want to say.
Yeah, tremendously powerful. What So what do we got over here then?
So now over here we got our coil, our ignition coil, which
Okay.
similar
Yeah,
similar
that's
thing is kind of happening.
we got
The
almost 6 amps there. It's hard to see, I'm sure, but that's almost 6 amps of current.
Yeah, which I would say during a cranking event, 6 amps is pretty healthy to me. So not really worried about powers and grounds to my ignition coil,
Dude,
right?
that's a great point. Yeah,
Yeah,
when you hit the key and you got all that current going to that starter, especially when that engine's cold, that starter's working and it's pulling that battery voltage way down. And when
yeah,
voltage goes down, current drops. So to have 6 amps of current, man, I like how you did that. I love that. You evaluate a piece of data and you made a decision on the stuff you're not going to waste time testing. That's
yeah,
brilliant.
yep, yep.
So
That's the best load test is during
yeah,
during
the ones on the car, right?
yep,
Yeah, nobody ever my mentor used to say to me, Jim Morton used to say, nobody ever says, when I get my bat 40 and put it on the battery, the engine doesn't want to start. The real load is the starter. I love that. So
yeah,
tell me, so we looked at a bunch of data. Obviously, it's our job as diagnosticians, at least efficient ones, to gather information and make a decision accordingly. Hopefully, logically, we're gathering the info that's easy to grab and we're using that info to make decisions on what tests to perform and which areas that we don't even want to test. Like you just said, you saw a good current, you're not worried about powers or grounds for that circuit. So I love that. So where did we go? What do you do with that information you just gathered over the last we talked about for the last 30 minutes?
yeah. Which was actually gathering this data was probably over the course at this point maybe say a week. With the two starts a day going out
Yeah,
there.
that's tough.
I would say, at that point, I don't see anything concrete that I had to replace. One thing I do want to say, which were clues, and it's always good to see the clues, which I definitely don't always see.
Hmm.
Sometimes I see them, but I don't interpret them as a clue at that point.
Me
Um,
too, buddy.
so the at some point I did pull a plug, right? Why not? Because I just
Spark
wanted
plug?
to see. Yeah, I just wanted to see, how one looked. And they were black. They were just like straight
That's a
up.
good
They were
clue.
dry. They were dry, but they were black. And I thought
Gotcha. Like,
that was, I'm like, all right, they shouldn't be this black, you know. So at that point, I did put a set of spark plugs in it because I didn't want to overlook something that was just easy.
yeah. You basically you were fixing the collateral damage so the engine had the opportunity to run good and then you could capture some info afterwards, right?
Yeah. Also,
I've been
I didn't want to have to worry about that during my testing. Pretty much, these
yeah.
black plugs, are they causing it, and I can't see it. So
Hey, the
um,
best the best scenario I can compare that to is how many times you get a car that has a severely bad battery. You can't really go any further till you take care of that bad battery because it
oh, for
affects
sure.
everything.
Yeah, that's the first. This car needs a battery. That's it.
So after seeing all that stuff, I mean, where would you go from here?
So from here, because we gathered quite a bit of data at this point, I want to see what's actually happening inside the cylinder during our long crank event, and there's pretty much one way to do that. If Brandon, if you want to elaborate on that.
It's phenomenal you mentioned that because I know where you're going with this, Rick. Looking with ignition waveforms, you can see combustion happening inside the cylinder, like
Yeah.
almost being in there witnessing it. And it's the same on every car with it, with spark ignition. You
Yeah.
know, whether it's an old car or a new car, you can't, because it's physics, right? You can't change it. So if you can learn to interpret it. So what are we showing here? Obviously, we got a lot of time on the screen because these look nothing like ignition events from
Right.
how I like to view ignition typically.
No, no. So we're just looking at a long time frame here uh, during the event, and
Okay.
we just want to see when we're zoomed out like this. We want to see how the whole picture kind of looks, right? The whole picture, and
Yeah.
pretty much, if you average out our highest and our lowest cranking events, you kind of get an average uh,
Oh, okay. I see. Add
cranking
these to that.
KV.
And
Right? So it's kind of like when you take a spark tester, those ones you could adjust and put them on the
yeah.
spark plug, and it says 20 kV, 30. If it jumps this gap, it's 30 kV. So
Hmm.
this is pretty much what we're looking at. We're just seeing it on the scope, right?
I love it. I love it.
Real
So
time.
zooming in. Oh, okay. That offers some clues there.
Yep. Yeah.
So this is that same waveform. We just zoomed in a little bit to one event, put some less time on the screen. Boy, I see something that catches my eye. Look at that burn time.
Yeah.
You know, a healthy coil on most cars, I've seen over 1.2 milliseconds, which is
Yeah.
this is 802 microseconds, so 802 millionths of a second.
Yeah.
And we're talking we should be within thousands of a second.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this is almost, I don't want to say half, maybe three-quarters of what it should be. And you know what I love about this is that, like I said, the strategy analyzing this is the same on every car. And
yeah.
no matter how easy or hard it is to grab the information, it is there if you want it.
Yeah.
And with a burn line that is shorter, that means that energy is being used elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good clue to something is going on, after seeing enough of them.
I hear that.
Enough good ones, at least. I
Yeah.
think.
So our go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think that's the important thing is seeing as many good captures as you can to know, oh no, this don't look good. Right.
Yeah. My mentor always said, if you know what good looks like, bad sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. 100%.
So there we go. Regroup. And I love that because, we got to analyze information, take a test result and think it through. What is it telling you? What does it not tell you? Understand the limitations of that. We know we got high firing KV. We just showed that. That upward slope, what does that tell you?
That tells me that we pretty much have a lean condition going on inside the cylinder because that upward slope is an indicator, right? That you have a lean cylinder happening.
I agree with that 100%. And at this point, I mean, we verified the inputs. We verified the computer is doing what it's supposed to do, meaning in this case, opening up the injector. Yet we
Yep.
still have a lean condition. In my mind, even with good fuel pressure, the only thing we haven't verified was if the injectors can actually deliver the fuel properly. It's kind of what it sounds like. Is that where
Yeah.
you were going with this?
Yeah. That's after gathering all that data. That's where it led me. That's the road it led me down.
I got you. So tell me about this. You said you did an injector balance test and it came out okay.
Yeah, so it's funny. I actually the injector balance tester that I have was, I bought one of those cheap ones on Amazon. I'm like, this thing can't be that bad, right? So I got it, put it on there, and what it does is it'll fire each injector. You hook it up to one single injector, it'll fire that injector for a certain amount of time, say, whatever it is, 500 milliseconds, right? Or however much that tester did. And you fire each one and you watch your fuel pressure drop as that injector fires from this little machine, and I went through the whole test and every injector dropped evenly. And then pretty much the tool just took a shit on me. And that,
Ah,
so,
that sucks.
you
Well,
know,
you know what? We still got to stop and analyze that. I mean, understand the limitations of the test you performed. Like we know that means the injectors flow fuel, but it doesn't tell us really how the injectors spray that fuel.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And, once I saw the injectors drop the same amount of pressure, that's kind of where I was going with it. Is that
I
fuel
love
going in
that.
the cylinder properly, pretty much? Because that's
It,
almost the last thing left, I felt like.
it sounds like you've eliminated everything, first of all. Second, that also justifies visual inspection because there's nothing else left, but you suspect at this point it's the injectors. Now let me say something about that injector balance test. If you perform that injector balance test and it showed an imbalance in injectors, I mean, right there, that's a no-brainer. We already verified the circuit's good. It needs injectors. But the fact that it passed that test, I love that it doesn't prove how the injectors spray. It just proves they drop the same amount of pressure, meaning the amount of fuel gets there. We just don't know how pretty it is when it gets there. So
Yeah,
you pulled the injectors out, I assume, didn't you?
I did. I did. I wanted to actually see this. I wanted to see it happen.
So you got a video of this, do you?
I do. Do.
Let's take a look at it.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear that? Whoa. I am not liking that at all. Look at that spray pattern. That's atrocious. It looks like
Yeah.
a garden hose.
Yeah. Just like it's streaming into the cylinder, just probably pooling up on the bottom of the piston, I would imagine.
So I
Right.
got to say, for those of you that aren't aware, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you are, we can't burn liquid fuel. It just doesn't burn. Only vaporized, atomized gasoline burns. So to deliver fuel in this fashion, it's clear the injectors deliver fuel. Um, there's not an issue with volume. However, it's the spray pattern that I mean, I won't even use the word suspect of. These injectors are junk.
Yep.
These are no good. Did you try to clean them or something, didn't you? Didn't you tell me you tried to clean them? As an experiment, or am I mistaken? Maybe
You
you
know,
didn't. I don't remember.
I may have. Now I can't even. This car was going
This is
a little while back.
oh, sure. I remember. But you put new injectors in, right?
Yeah, yeah. So once I saw that, I was like, this car's gonna get four OE injectors. No, no
Yeah.
question. After seeing that and everything, all the testing that I did, there I was sure. And I may even have cranked it three or four more times. Maybe not that many. However many more times just to verify because I have a couple videos and I wanted to make sure, I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was making the right call on this vehicle.
I'm with you, dude. It looks like, I love how the data led you here. I say it all the time. The data doesn't lie. But it's great that, you didn't guess. You used information, you leveraged those test results as ammunition to guide you towards your next logical test. And those tests told you what's not wrong with the vehicle. And it kind of it pushed you towards a corner. And the only thing left was the injectors. And you pulled it out. And there it was. That's a beautiful diagnosis, you if it took a month, you know?
Yeah.
So here's the new one. Let's watch this video.
Shut it off and prime the key again. That's me. Yep. Yep.
Get a look at this still. That looks much better. It's more like a cloud.
No stream.
Yeah, that's what we need to see. That's a good boy. I love that visual right there because now you know when you go back together
Yeah.
what to anticipate, right?
And look at that. I mean, before this vehicle, I heard during, training or whatever, or saw pictures of how an injector should look, but actually seeing this compared to a bad one, this was a great, learning experience of seeing that injector spray pattern can
Hmm.
is real pretty much,
Oh yeah, that's a great shot right there. That's a great shot.
Yeah.
So more importantly, let's get back to the car as far as testing goes. I always tell people test and capture, test and capture, test and capture. If you have test results that indicate a problem, save them. And when you fix the car or you change something, you make a repair or an adjustment, or you maintain something, you make a change, repeat those same captures, even if it takes you another half hour. It's
Yeah.
worth its weight in gold to have that known good info.
Yeah, because
What's
that's how
going on?
that's how you learn, right?
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
So this is your cranking KV, and you're down 2,000 volts. I mean, that's significant. You went from over 13 kV to 11. Basically, the engine, what this is saying is the ignition system is not having to work as hard to discharge that spark, meaning that fuel's getting there properly. I love
Properly.
that.
Yep. And this is during the same conditions, which is important, doing the testing during the conditions that the problem happens at.
Yeah,
So this
I
was a
love it.
this was a cold
Ice
start,
cold.
first start of the day, compared to
Yeah.
the other one.
I just realized I goofed. I said cranking firing voltage. What I mean is we cranked it and it started. This is that ice cold. Same as it's the same test as before, but I just called it the wrong thing. This is firing voltage as this thing's at idle under those cold start conditions, right?
Oh, yes, yes. You're right. You know why? You know why? Because what led me also what led me to this point was when the vehicle was idling, I saw the signature to the waveform, but it wasn't enough to actually cause a misfire
Right.
as far as a
Yeah.
lean secondary goes.
It
Yeah,
was trending lean, but it wasn't so bad that combustion didn't happen. I
correct.
see what you're saying.
Correct.
Wow, look how much that changed.
Yeah.
We went from 800 microseconds, millionths of a second, to just over 1,000 milliseconds. Sorry,
Yeah.
just over one
One
millisecond,
right. 1 point.
1.2. Hey, you know something? That's pretty much like standard. Like that is, I'm very comfortable with that number. But look how clean and nice that burn line looks now. Before it was sloping up here.
Sloping up and short. Yep.
Yeah. So look at your firing there. There's the good and there's the bad. This is all over the look, and it's a lot more even too from cylinder to
Yeah.
cylinder. Here, there's
Yeah.
variations, and things like compression can cause that, but also variations in fuel delivery for sure. That's what I wanted to see. Guys, look at the difference from good to bad. I don't know if you realize this, but as Rick said, as Rick was trying to portray here, ignition offers we get to see inside the cylinder. We see combustion through the eyes of the ignition scope. And everything that happens in that cylinder is going to affect this burn line. And this is basically saying things are really, this is nice. There's plenty of fuel and plenty of oxygen, and the spark doesn't have a problem traveling through it. But here we're running out of fuel, and this ignition system has to work harder and harder to achieve that same thing. Since it's wasting so much energy going up, it loses that duration. We've gone from 1.2 milliseconds, which is 1,000 microseconds, to only 800 microseconds. A significant change here, 20% change. And Rick, I know from experience, as you start to get closer to 700 microseconds, there's just not enough burn time to sustain combustion. That's when you start feeling misfires due to lean conditions.
For
But this
sure.
is right on
Yeah.
the cusp. And you know
Yeah.
what? I got to hand it to you, because if you were chasing a misfire, that would be a totally different approach. If this got lean enough where it actually misfired, I think you'd have found that the first day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that
So these,
definitely. But in this case, yeah, there was no other symptoms that made it, maybe if this car came in the year after, I wouldn't have had to spend a month on it, but
hey, you know what? You're never going to forget this car, buddy.
no.
That's for sure.
No,
And
definitely
the
not.
lessons just from hearing you talk for the last 40 minutes or so, what you've taken away from this is a game changer. And I hope you people watching are thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
Rick
definitely.
is an I've known Rick many years now. He's a brilliant diagnostician and he's very efficient in his ways. And I also know how often he practices because he and I, we have some phone conversations and Facebook messages, excuse me, going back and forth for years. So I
Yeah.
I know some of the crap he deals with, and it's how he tackles it is pretty brilliant. But I got a list of summary bullet points here, Brick. But you want to walk us through just like what are some of the takeaways you had in your experience with this diagnosis? What would you
Yeah.
recommend to the techs watching this?
I would say, start with the easy stuff first, something the easiest thing to verify that's good, like scan data, just take a look at all your inputs. That's easy. You don't even have to do any work for that.
Yeah,
Um,
right from the seat.
and then just let your testing lead you. If you're doing the
I love that.
testing will lead you where you have to go. Um,
Love
that's
it.
pretty much the main thing I would say on that's what got me to the end of this one.
I love it. And you know what? Again, I'll say it. It's science, guys. Ladies too. Sorry, it's science. Whether you believe it or not, you're scientists. You're very valuable scientists because not everybody can do this job. And it's one thing to fix a car, it's another thing to fix a car efficiently.
Yeah,
Now,
and
that's
Brennan,
counterintuitive.
if I could add one more thing,
Please.
sometimes you also have to re-engineer, right? How a system works. You have to figure out how Acura or Honda is working the system. And the only
You can't
way
always read about that either.
is through the testing. It's not always in service information how they're delivering fuel or how their system works. um which I think is cool, and it's kind of a pain in the ass that we have to do that, but.
Yeah, I get it. Well,
Yeah,
listen, I mean, to watch you go through this, and there was a couple points where I'm cringing because I'm picturing standing out there in that cold weather with all my tools. I'm shivering. I can't think right because I'm cold. You know,
yeah,
it's pretty impressive the way you handled this. But if I got to step back and evaluate what I took away from this, is that you chose data and you chose specific data because you learned how systems operate, not just this car, any car. You know, you know how fuel injection systems work, for instance, that it requires inputs so the computer can make decisions. And what's the decision? To hold open in this case, the fuel injector. You know how things work, so you were able to guide your lab scope testing, for instance. You're not going to read about that in a book, are you? I mean, lab scope testing is you're kind of on your own, but it allows you to see things. But the scope doesn't do the work. The scope just captures the data. You have to know where to place those leads and why. And you can't do any of that unless you have a game plan. So I loved your approach with you say scope in the primary circuits. You mean the inputs versus the outputs. What does the PCM need to initiate what needs to happen to start the car? I love how you said you start with the easy tests first and you let them guide you towards your more difficult tests. And when I say difficult, I don't mean I'm reluctant to do them, but I certainly feel better about doing them if I have a reason to,
yeah,
rather than just to do them and go, what a waste of time that was. You know what I
yeah,
find? Anytime I do logical testing in the approach that you have performed, that you've demonstrated tonight, I never waste time. Any test I perform gives me valid information. Whether the test is positive or negative, I've learned something valuable and it
yeah,
helps me make my next decision. And that is, eliminate what's good on the vehicle and go find out what's not good, or in this case, missing from the equation. In this case, it was poorly atomized fuel, and you nailed it, dude.
yeah,
Very impressive.
yeah. Thanks, man. It was a long road. It was a long road for this one. But that's
Oh,
what
for sure.
it takes sometimes, and it's
Well,
what you
again,
gotta do. It's fun.
I really, really, I mean this. I appreciate you taking the time because, like I said, it's darn near it's near 8 o'clock here. You're in Chicagoland, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
almost
We're
seven
coming up
o'clock.
on yeah, coming up on 7. Not too
7.
bad.
So
But
I don't feel bad for you. I feel bad for me because it's later.
yeah,
I'm on the East
yeah,
Coast.
38.
Guys, Rick Urso, diagnostician at High Tech Auto Specialties, excuse me, out in Chicago. We'll have a link where he's located. Hook up with Rick on Facebook if you have any questions. Phenomenal guy. Rick, I want you to keep your eye out when this goes to YouTube on some questions. People might have questions for you. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for watching. I am Brandon Steckler, Technical Editor Motor Age Magazine. I think this was a very successful Wrench Tales second edition, and I really look forward to the next one. Rick, thanks again, my friend. I'll catch up with you soon, okay?
All right.
Take care, brother.